Do you think UFOs are just stories from lone witnesses? What if, at the exact same moment, hundreds and thousands of people in different places looked up at the sky and saw the same thing? These weren't rumors or imagination. People were calling the police, filing reports, and telling the same story without knowing each other. They described huge objects, strange glowing spheres, and movements that can't be explained by ordinary technology. These cases were officially recorded. Explanations were given, but none of them ever truly matched what people saw with their own eyes. On the evening of March 13, 1997, people in Arizona started doing something they had never done on such a massive scale before. They were calling the police and saying the same thing. A strange object appeared in the sky over several cities. At first, people thought it was airplanes. Then they thought it might be military exercises. But the longer they looked up, the clearer it became. This didn't look like anything familiar. The object was huge. It moved slowly and steadily. The lights on it were arranged in a clear pattern, as if it was one solid structure, not a group of separate light sources. The most important thing is that people saw it at the same time. Not one neighborhood, not one street, different cities, different people, different points of view. They didn't know each other. But later, when they started comparing what they had seen, it turned out their descriptions almost completely matched. Calls to the police came in by the dozens. Dispatchers couldn't keep up with the reports. Some police officers also saw what was happening while they were responding to calls. Later, officials gave an explanation: military flares. But the problem was that flares can't move that slowly and in sync, hold their shape, block out stars as the object passed overhead. And most importantly, people watched it for far too long. Years passed, and many witnesses still say the same thing. This was not an airplane, not a helicopter, and not a military exercise. To this day, this case is considered one of the most massive UFO sightings in US history because everything lined up: the number of witnesses, the timing, the matching accounts, and the lack of a convincing explanation. But Arizona wasn't the only place where people saw strange objects in the sky. If you dig deeper, a disturbing detail starts to appear. Similar sightings happen far too often near nuclear sites, power plants, storage facilities, test zones, and one of the most frightening cases happened in Europe shortly before the largest nuclear disaster in human history. Before the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, people were also talking about strange lights and glowing objects in the sky. And from this point on, the story becomes truly unsettling. In the spring of 1986, life in Chernobyl felt normal. The plant was operating, people were going to their shifts. The city was getting ready for the May holidays. But long before the actual accident, some plant workers and local residents later recalled strange things: not accidents, not technical failures, but what was happening in the sky. They talked about glowing objects and strange lights appearing over the plant and nearby areas. Sometimes they were described as bright spheres, sometimes as motionless glowing points hanging above the site. It's important to understand this. These stories were not included in any official reports. People talked about them among themselves. They were remembered only after the disaster. Some people saw this days before the accident, others weeks earlier. The details differed, but they all agreed on one thing: it didn't look like airplanes or ordinary lights in the sky. Later, after the tragedy, similar stories started surfacing from other places. People said that before major disasters, strange glowing objects were sometimes seen in the sky. There were also disputed reports from the United States. Some claimed that before the 2001 tragedy in New York, individual witnesses also saw glowing spheres over the city. There are no confirmed mass sightings to support this. Nothing like this was officially recorded, and that's important to point out. But the fact that similar descriptions keep appearing in different countries and different years raises questions. Chernobyl became the largest nuclear disaster in history, and stories like this continue to surface again and again around nuclear sites. When you put all these cases together, a strange pattern starts to emerge. UFOs are most often seen near nuclear power plants, close to military bases, in areas where nuclear technology is stored or tested, Arizona, Chernobyl, other restricted zones, too often to be a simple coincidence. And from there, the story takes us to places where the witnesses were no longer ordinary civilians, but military personnel who documented similar objects near nuclear infrastructure. One of those cases happened in Europe, near a NATO military base. And that's where the connection between UFOs and nuclear sites becomes especially serious. At the end of 1980, strange events didn't happen over a city or a civilian site. They happened near a NATO military base. Rendlesham Forest is located in the United Kingdom, between two US Air Force bases. At that time, nuclear weapons were stored at those bases. That's what makes this story especially sensitive. It all started at night. Military personnel noticed unusual lights in the forest near the base perimeter. At first, they assumed it was a crashed aircraft. A group of servicemen went out to check the source of the light. In the forest, they saw a small glowing object that didn't look like an airplane, a helicopter, or a drone, especially by 1980 standards. The object maneuvered, changed colors, and then suddenly disappeared. Marks were left on the ground. Later measurements showed abnormal radiation levels at the observation site. But what matters most is this: it wasn't a single incident. The object was seen over several nights by different groups of military personnel, different witnesses. Their accounts matched. One of the officers made an audio recording during the observation itself. That recording still exists, as do the official incident reports, which were later declassified. The military never claimed it was extraterrestrial, but no ordinary explanation for the incident was ever found. To this day, the Rendlesham case is considered one of the most well-documented UFO incidents in history. And it's here that one thing becomes clear: this wasn't just random lights in the sky. Arizona showed the scale. Chernobyl showed disturbing coincidences around a nuclear disaster. Rendlesham showed military confirmation and a nuclear context. And this wasn't an isolated case. In other countries, there were events where strange objects were seen by hundreds of people at the same time, in broad daylight, without darkness, without military bases, and without secrecy. The next episode is one of the most unusual, because this time the witnesses were children and teachers. This case is very different from everything that came before. There was no night, no secret facilities, no military base nearby. It was an ordinary school day. April 1966. A suburb of Melbourne, Australia, Westall School, hundreds of children on recess, teachers nearby. At that exact moment, a strange object appeared in the sky. It was clearly visible, not a flash, not distant lights, but a distinct object that was descending and, according to witnesses, came down near the school. The children screamed. Teachers tried to get them back inside the building, but too many people were already looking in the same direction. The object rose back up and suddenly disappeared. No explosion, no trace left in the sky. What matters is this: there were far too many witnesses to dismiss it as imagination. Children, teachers, local residents, dozens, and by some estimates, hundreds of people. Later, people in military uniforms arrived at the scene. The area was examined. Some witnesses were asked not to talk about what they had seen. Years later, as adults, former students began giving interviews. Their accounts matched in detail, despite the decades that had passed since that day. They weren't trying to prove anything. They were simply describing what they saw. That's why the Westall case is considered one of the strangest mass UFO sightings in history. Broad daylight, a huge number of witnesses, and a complete lack of a convincing explanation. Up to this point, it was easy to say that UFOs are usually seen at night near military sites around nuclear infrastructure. But Westall breaks that logic. And that raises a question: what if these sightings aren't isolated incidents, but part of a long-term process that lasts for weeks or even months? The final episode is exactly about that. About a country where strange objects in the sky weren't seen just once or for a single day, but over an extended period of time, and where even the Air Force became involved. The final case stands apart from all the previous ones for one reason. It didn't last hours, it didn't last days, it lasted months. From late 1989 through 1990, people in Belgium began reporting strange objects in the sky. Reports came in from different cities and regions, and each time people described roughly the same thing: huge triangular objects, slow movement, bright lights along the edges, sometimes hovering over homes and fields. At first, these reports were met with skepticism, but as the number of witnesses kept growing, the situation changed. Those involved in the sightings included ordinary civilians, police officers, pilots, and eventually the Belgian Air Force. The military scrambled fighter jets to intercept the objects. Radar systems picked up targets. Pilots confirmed they could see strange objects, but couldn't get close to them. Most importantly, this was officially acknowledged. The Belgian Air Force publicly stated that the objects were detected on radar. They did not match any known aircraft, and there was no final explanation. No one said they were extraterrestrial, but no one could explain what they actually were. The Belgian UFO Wave became one of the few cases where everything came together: mass sightings, a long time span, civilian witnesses, military involvement, and technical confirmation. Arizona showed that this can happen on a massive scale. Chernobyl showed that similar sightings unsettlingly coincide with disasters. Rendlesham showed that the military sees these objects near nuclear sites. Westall showed that this can happen in broad daylight with hundreds of witnesses. Belgium showed that it can last for months and be tracked on radar. You can argue about each case individually. You can come up with explanations. You can be skeptical. But one fact remains: too many people in different countries at different times have seen something that doesn't fit into our usual picture of the world. And the main question here isn't even what it was. It's this: why do these stories keep repeating?